Welcome to the Social Work Radio's talk show. I'm your co-host, Alyssa Lotmore, and today we have a special pre-recorded segment with Julia Soto Lebentritt. Today, she's going to be talking about dementia. Her passion is to help early-stage dementia caregivers. Her work in the field has included writing and publishing a creative arts activity guide for caregivers of early-stage dementia. Since then, she has presented several workshops and seminars and have coached individual caregivers. Julia, who is a bereavement facilitator at the Community Hospice for St. Peter's Health Partners, is also developing a specialty in dementia care bereavement support services. This is a return home for Julia, who received her undergraduate degree in English education at SUNY Albany's downtown campus. Here she wrote poetry and fell in love with her first husband. In this interview, she will give you reasons for her second degree in fine arts and her specialty in dementia care. So welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm happy to be here.
Well, you are going to be doing a presentation, and what I'm really thankful for is that you're going to be giving us sort of an overview for those of us who might be planning on attending the presentation or who can't make the presentation. We'll still have that overview of your very important topic. So I want to jump right into this and ask, why is it important that social workers understand the dementia experience?
Well, Alyssa, every social worker listening will have to handle a percentage of dementia cases, as well as most likely have personal experiences of this difficult disease in family and friends' lives. I wanted to just quote the American Journal of Alzheimer's Disease from an article published February 2010, The Role of Grief in Dementia Caregiving. Approximately 52 million adults in the United States care for an ill or disabled family member, and of these, almost 9 million are caregivers for a loved one with dementia. So it's well established that family members caring for a person with dementia are at high risk for serious physical illness, emotional strain, and mental health problems. For geriatric healthcare providers, comprehensively understanding the caregiving experience is essential to developing effective interventions for alleviating caregiver distress. So that's what I'm here to talk about, and I also want to underline that social workers today there's a new job field opening up, which is in care navigators for dementia caregivers and their loved ones, and that's very exciting, and that's a job that's being offered to social workers.
Well, it's really interesting to see that it's developing into more specialized, the dementia caregivers, and they're separating it. When I was a BSW student, my first internship was with caregiver. It was for caregiver support services, but it was just any type of caregiver. So it's nice to see that they're, specializing and saying this is caregiving for dementia, because I'm assuming there's different types of supports and resources, and that will lead me sort of into my next question. So what is the most important thing that social workers can do to help caregivers and care recipients navigate the dementia experience? Because for caregiving, there's, whether you're caring for someone who might have a physical illness or dementia or something else, the experience is different. So what do social workers need to know for a caregiver who's trying to navigate this type of caregiving experience?
Well, it's been exciting to me to see the parallel between my work as a bereavement facilitator and my deeply motivated interest in dementia and dementia care. So what I am going to talk about is especially from Pauline Boss's work, Loving Someone Who Has Dementia, How to Find Hope While Coping with Stress and Grief. I'm going to use the term that she coined, ambiguous losses. What we need to do is help both the caregiver and the care recipient deal with the ambiguous losses of early stage dementia. And this is a fairly new way of looking at how to help relieve the stress, especially and burden of caregiving for people with dementia. So what do I mean by ambiguous losses? Well, if you compare loss as death and loss as memory loss, you'll see there's a big difference. With death, it's like, boom, the loved one disappears, is gone. And I'm not minimalizing that at all. But with memory losses, slowly, gradually, painfully, the loved one is both gone and still here, sometimes again and again for years.
Yeah.
So, for example, the first clue that my own mother was experiencing cognitive loss was when she turned to me in the kitchen. And I'm her youngest daughter, and she says, "By the way, I've been meaning to ask you anyway, who are you?"
Yeah.
This was the beginning of a long, frustrating, and tragic relational loss.
Well, that's I like the term relational loss, and here it is, your mother, and she's asking you who you are, and you still have that bond with her, but
Yeah.
then talking to someone who doesn't share that bond anymore, or they're not remembering, or they're losing that memory.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I don't even know how to explain that. And as caregivers, you're caring for this person who might not have that connection to you anymore that you still have with them. It's
staggering. That's just one example of the kinds of relational loss. It's a very complex illness for the entire family, and this loss is part of it because ambiguous loss is and dementia, early to stage dementia especially, are like a nightmare in the closet. And in my presentation, I use visual aids from the book Nightmare in the Closet by Mayor Mercer, the children's book,
Yep.
the fairy tale. And why a fairy tale children's book? Well, it's universal. And also, there's always a problem, and it's usually an inner struggle for the characters involved. And also, there's a happy ending. And as social workers and caregivers, bereavement facilitators, we want to help try to bring a happy ending. So, what happens is that this ambiguous loss and early dementia are like the nightmare in a closet. First, there's a closed door. No one wants to look at what's happening or see it and acknowledge the changes or validate the loss. And this went on in my family with my mom, where my father would deny that anything was changing cognitively, and we couldn't understand that something organic was going on. She was terribly frustrated, crying in and out of recognizing me. And my father would say, when she stopped making breakfast and just got up and went down and sat at the table, "She's just a lazy girl." My mother, who raised four kids successfully to mature adults. So there's this secret nature of the nightmare as it unveils itself, especially in the beginning, early stages, and there's a lot of emotions, denial, fear, and these are grief teaching points. So what we try to do as grief facilitators and grief counselors is help people acknowledge the loss and acknowledge it ourselves, in dealing with them, not say like, well, I know just how you feel. No, I acknowledge the pain of your loss. And what we try to do is help normalize that loss. So if you have someone alone, usually the caregiver is alone with the loved one, as the spouse or daughter, like me, it's a big, scary nightmare, and it's a very, very slow, go on but still here situation.
So how can we help caregivers develop empathy and turn that nightmare into a happy ending? I mean, we're talking about this process, how long it is. It's draining, emotionally draining, physically draining to even care for a person. How do we get to that part? What can social workers do to help caregivers develop that empathy?
Well, I already tried to bring up that we have to help the caregiver and the loved one, not just be frightened of what's going on, but accept it, and also just become more calm with what's happening, and experiencing this as a painful loss that is going to go on and not have closure very quick. So going back to the idea of the fairy tale, there's a confrontation going on usually in the dynamic of the caregiver and their loved one. For example, I was with a caregiver, and she stood in front of her spouse, who's having progressive early stage dementia, and she said to me, "There's nothing in there." She was so frustrated because he couldn't fill in the forms at a new doctor's. And she said, "There's nothing in there." And her spouse was a big guy standing behind her, said, "I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I miss doing it." But she was so frustrated in having to take over his duties, like the online banking and everything else, driving, that she just was angry and very unaware that there is something there.
Yeah.
And that's the point that we have to teach. It's education about dementia.
And caregiving is so hard to anyway. Like, caregiving is not an easy easy thing to do. And I guess I'm wondering, like you said, the woman was just frustrated, and there must be some sort of feelings of guilt after the fact, because this was she loves her husband, and it's how do we, you get these moments of frustration, and it's hard, and it's ongoing, and it's every day, day after day. And just that support and the husband's upset. He wants to be able to do those things. So it seems like there's so much that's needed, so much support, especially when there's a caregiver who there is no respite. They're the only caregiver. There's not other family members who are coming in to assist or to rotate. There seems to be a lot that's needed as supports.
That's right. And so part of what I called my presentation was tools, and for the social worker or the geriatric caregiver, our healthcare person, helping the person see where they are and where their family is in helping them, or where the community is in helping them, and see what has happened to their social atom because of the changes that are slowly revealing themselves. Help the person, the caregiver, allow more helpers to come in and to help find those too. And that's another big new thing that's happening with the new grants for that the Eddie and Alzheimer's Association have, and Catholic Charities, that they are training volunteers to go in and help.
Because that's an important part, because just thinking of people that I know, some of them are alone. They don't, their families across the country on the West Coast or something, and they're by themselves without that resource or support, or there's only one child, somewhat close, but not close enough. And, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody has dementia, is it good to keep them in their familiar environment, right? Not moving them across, the country or to another, so you're trying to keep the person in that same setting that they're familiar with, and it can be hard when no one's there.
Well, that's a very real scenario that is one of the hardest. There's the one when there is a companion, but the one where you have a person alone, there's a lot of decisions to be made about their safety and keeping them safe. And that is true, not to change the environment, but if safety's involved, then a day program is good, and that the reason. So there's education about what the dementia is, and that it is a very slow, gradual loss, clap, 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 that you have to acknowledge. It's painful, but also that that there are a lot of ways to help someone with that. So knowing your services in the community. Also, I made a point that knowing the essence of the person is so important. And one of the biggest problems I've seen with our social workers is that they don't have time to do that. So I often get a referral into nursing home to go in and help help the family understand the dementia, and also help the person with dementia. And so I spend time getting to know them and the context of their lives. And if they come from a Ukrainian background, then I know something about them. That's the essence of who they are in the original language, maybe. And so I look at that, or if they live in Watervliet, I know something more about them. The essence of the person is very important, and that's what I was trying to get to, is that when a caregiver is frustrated and says there's nothing in there anymore, that's so wrong. Like John Seisel wrote the book, I'm Still Here. Emotionally, there even is a stronger right brain. And so that what's still there is a lot of emotion. And how can someone not be afraid if someone is their caregiver says, or if like someone from outside comes in and we're going to send you to a nursing home. So this is all very referral like that.
Yeah.
All has to be handled in a very careful way. You don't point at the person who has dementia. You don't. You want to help them feel safe. And the important thing to remember is that that the tools are often nonverbal in understanding a person with dementia. And by that I mean that if you think about the first language, and I have a specialty in lullabies, so I've studied the use of singing to children to sleep in helping them transition to become calm. And as in the fairy tales, the beast, the nightmare, cannot it won't be lovable until they are first loved. So soothing, calming is very important, and that is done with the first language, like you and I are talking, eye-to-eye contact. You and I, like, I can feel, I don't feel intimidated by you. You make me feel safe. You certainly did everything you could to make me feel safe in this interview. And that's what has to happen with the caregiver or the intervening social worker to help the person who has dementia and their caregiver learn to feel safe using nonverbals. By that I mean touch, if that's allowed, simple validating. I hear what you said. What does this mean? Are you missing someone? When you say something that doesn't make sense, So I follow the work of Naomi Feil a lot, and she's is into validation therapy. John Seisel I mentioned. Also Paula Bowlby-Sifton brings up the need for the first language and time spent.
So how do we help caregivers then assess their own caregiving pain and the intervention and tools to reduce those stressors and gain resilience? Because we're talking about just having the caregivers, be calm and help the person that they're caring for feel safe and comfortable. But when they're under a lot of stress as a caregiver, what are some tools and resources that we can give to them to help them get to that point where they can then do that for the person that they're caring for?
Okay, well, I just want to refer to the fact that some of what I've mentioned already is available in the arts, especially, and that's how I got my specialty in arts, in the arts as well, a master's in creative writing. But I have used successfully music, and my book is called "As Long as You'll Sing, I'll Dance." And it is about creative arts activities to help caregivers relate, connect to their loved ones, and in a rich way, you know. So it's very interesting that a lot of people from the arts, Naomi Feil herself was an actress. So she uses a lot of dramatic ways of interacting. A lot of people who have written our books and are coming from the arts that are great tools for dementia caregivers. I was an activities director also, and I developed special dementia care programs, and I used a lot of creative arts activities. So I also believe that we can help the caregiver by helping them assess where they're at. And there are assessment tools, and one of them is one that I've been working on putting together myself because I want to do an interview survey. So I will give you the name of a very professionally done assessment tool, but I'll just give you a couple of my assessment questions. Tell me about what in your personal caregiving situation most distresses you. Now tell me about what you would most like to change for the better in your caregiving situation. So what I'm doing is I'm asking what's the pain and how can we make that into a more gainful, positive experience, a happy ending?
Yeah.
What connections with family and friends have been lost or changed due to your loved one's disabilities? And what have you tried to change? How well did it work? What works, what doesn't work, you know? What do you long for most about what you and your loved one used to share in the past? It's a hard one, right?
And these questions, it's when we think of, like I said, of a person who has dementia or anyone who is the person who's being cared for, so many times we forget about the assessment part for the person who's doing the caregiving.
Yeah.
And a lot of these questions
That's
are really
true.
helping that person say, I need services too. I need like kind of an assessment too. I need guidance too. It's not just I have to care for this person as a managing all their appointments and where they have to go and what needs to be done and how to keep them safe. I need resources and tools too, and that person to say, are you okay? Here's the tools and resources if you're not okay. And acknowledging that they're not okay. Because I think that denial of can sometimes be in there, and that's why these questions seem so good, is because it really helps that person think and say, wow, I really do need some assistance, or I need some help, or I'm not in an emotionally great place right now.
Exactly, and I need to cool out somehow by letting respite come in or something. And you're absolutely right. So there is a professionally done and great caregiver grief inventory that I've used too, and it's Marwitt Muser Caregiver Grief Inventory. There's a short and long form. You can Google that, MARWITT Muser, MEUSER. It's also found in a great book by edited by Kenneth Doka from the Hospice Foundation. The book is called Living with Grief, Alzheimer's Disease. Yeah.
So, I mean, you have so much knowledge about this topic, and before I said you will be presenting, you already presented.
Yes.
What was the best thing most meaningful thing, I should say, about presenting this information at the Internships in Aging Brown Bag Lunch Series and any other workshops that you give you were doing presentations about this topic and sharing information? What's so meaningful about it?
The exchange is fabulous with people. This is seeing the caregiver's losses and the person with dementia's losses is is really like an important thing that we don't see. It's an emotional journey, and it's just like with bereavement support. Where else can you go to get what we do? Like so. So the interest I already presented here at the School of Social Welfare at Brown Bag Lunch, and the room was full. There were 25 students and social workers came in there, and the interest was really there. The one-on-ones afterward were extremely meaningful. The some of what was brought up were some very, like you mentioned, some difficult scenarios, like dementia caregivers who were abused by their parents as children.
Wow.
That's a hard one, and I thought, well, maybe they shouldn't be the ones who are trying to caregive for their loved ones, but maybe they are the only ones. Mm-hmm. So that's a dilemma, and so I came to something that I know about closure. Not that closure is one of the biggest problems with ambiguous loss, because you never can get the closure. It goes on and on,
Mm-hmm.
and the closure is also. There are 5 things needed for closure. The ability to say, I love you. I love you is one of what first, then it doesn't have to be first, but I love you, forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and goodbye.
Yeah.
So that would need to be done over and over again in the case of ongoing dementia, but it is a potential way of it being an opportunity for the caregivers who had a tough relationship, and an opportunity to find a closure and also grow compassion for the unknown. And what do we know? We don't know that. So I really did enjoy presenting this material, and it is very new. And one of the best things about it was the title of that I gave it was coming from the artist side of me, the arts. I gave the title Down by the Butternut, Finding the Way Back May Be a Way Forward, Tools to Help People with Dementia and Their Caregivers Deal with the Ambiguous Losses of Early Stage Dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can definitely see the arts in that.
Yeah, so one of the questions roaming around the room at the end of it was, well, what about the butternut? So I said, oh, you want to hear about the butternut? So I read them. This it's kind of short. Can I read it?
Yes, that's fine.
My grandmother lived alone in an old red farmhouse on the hill. When I wanted to find a flower, root, bird, or a beaver pond, I knew she could tell me where to go on the mountain. Her directions always included down by the butternut tree. When Graham slipped back in memory for a moment, she would note my puzzled look, and then remembering who I was, she'd validate my lack of understanding. Of course, you don't know where the butternut tree is. It isn't there anymore. It was gone long before you came here. I had to learn to follow Graham's faded gray eyes staring out the window. Down by the butternut tree was gone, but still there, acting as a compass in my grandmother's directions. It's normal to remember the past, even though we are fully aware that things have changed. In fact, I could see the butternut tree with Graham, and some of us made wagers as to where down by the butternut tree was. We looked for butternuts and butternut leaves. If we found that one butternut, we knew we would feel even closer relationship with Graham. Your usual GPS will never take you by way of the butternuts, but this is how we need to find a person living with dementia. As Pauline Boss, family therapist scholar, wrote, human relationships can indeed transcend time and place. Graham's directions to Down by the Butternut Tree gave us a deeper sense of the mountain and time itself. Many things in our daily lives are gone and still here. Oh yes, there was a frailty in Graham's age that suggested, well, if the butternut is both gone and here in memory, she and even we may be imperfect. ending even as we are beginning here together today. So,
Very nice.
yeah.
So it seems like you enjoy giving these, like putting this together too and sharing this information. I
Oh,
think
yes.
you can definitely tell just from your expressions that our listeners can't see, but you definitely can tell you have a passion for this. So what are some resources as we wrap up here? What are some resources? I mean, people listen to this and they can attend at your workshop. What are some resources now for any bereavement support services or information on creative dementia caregiving tools? Where can people find information?
Okay, well, our hospice grief services are open to community, family and friends, and hospice family and friends. So that is getting known in the community. We also do grief support services for kids and adults. So that we have a comprehensive, extensive services. And I'm in Rensselaer, but we have sites in 5 or 6 different counties. And I'm going to give you my number. My phone number is 518-285-8116. And you can call me or pass that number along, and I'll be very happy to try to get you what you need.
Well, this is just such an important topic, especially with so many people aging, and there's more, like I said, now that we're having specialized dementia, caregiving groups, it shows that the numbers are there for people who need to access this. And it's I'm so glad that you shared this knowledge with us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Right, and Alyssa, I have a website, www.reciprocalcare.com, reciprocal care, and I also can be reached by email, lullabologist@aol.com.
Can you spell that one first to start with?
LULLAB as in boy, OLOGIST. I was named a lullabologist by an NBC commentator because of my lullaby work in New York City. But anyway, I am planning on developing my website, changing its name to something like Creative Dementia Care Tools. I'm that much into this, very motivated. I think I think this is a good way to approach helping dementia caregivers and their loved ones.
Well, thank you so much for not only being here today, but for the work you do, because it seems to be effective. And like I said, you had a pretty much packed house at your last workshop. So hopefully we'll be having you back again here at the University at Albany.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.